recent days, we have seen a couple of important developments regarding the Supreme Court. One, Senator Whitehouse and Wyden, I believe, sent a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland demanding that a special counsel be appointed to investigate the possible crimes of Supreme Court Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. And two, there have been, I believe, articles of impeachment drafted up and perhaps introduced against the same two Supreme Court justices. What just kind of give you the floor on what you think about those two developments?
Well, I've been saying for a long time, and I'm not an expert in congressional procedure, but it would seem to me an even easier first step would be for the Senate Judiciary Committee to just start holding some hearings. Don't punt it to a special counsel. Impeachment articles seem extreme. People just roll their eyes and say, that's so far gone. So I would say start calling some people that know Ginny Thomas and what her participation was in January 6th, and start calling experts to talk about the implications of what the Supreme Court did in Trump versus United States. And the press would have to cover those hearings. Setting that aside, do I think the articles of impeachment are frivolous? Absolutely not. Because, again, the court effectively morphed the foundational structure of our government. We couldn't do it as people without a revolution. We couldn't do it as it's our government. It's not a king. We are at the top. It's an inverted triangle. The people are at the top and the power drips down to a single person and we get to decide. They flipped that and made it into a pyramid where there's someone at the top and they dole out the power. So in my mind, it's hard to imagine what would be more subject to scrutiny, whether it be through a special counsel or through some kind of impeachment hearings, than an unelected Supreme Court majority that, through a sleight of hand, really, literally rewrote the foundational premises of our Constitution. And in addition, you have these abject conflicts of interest, the taking of money from billionaires with interest before the court. You've got Justice Alito hanging Stop the Steal flags on front lawns of two of his homes and just responding to the critique with outrage and indignant and this kind of disbelief that anybody would second guess. And then again, you have Ginny Thomas calling the White House, calling the chief of staff, saying, you got to get Mike Pence to not certify the election, which unbelievably the Supreme Court didn't even mention in their discussion of unofficial conduct. Well, I shouldn't say that. They did say calling the vice president and asking him to not certify the election, that is official, but to the extent to which he was acting as a member of the Senate, maybe it's unofficial. So they fudged it. But for all of these reasons, I don't think it's hyperbolic. I don't think you can really overemphasize how dangerous and out of control, and as we say as lawyers, ultra virus, beyond the power of these judges, what happened in Trump versus United States. So I think it's absolutely vital that this issue be relentlessly discussed, relentlessly investigated. I think it's something people should go to the polls over. I mean, we have other things to get over between now and December. This has made it very hard to overcome, but even more urgent, right? The stormtroopers, Glenn, are at the back door. And so what do? You pull the shotgun out of the closet, you do whatever it takes. We're in the emergency room. We're in triage. You got to get the hearts pumping again. And that's where we are. And so to the extent to which people watch this and they're nervous, okay, they're worried, we're speaking the truth. If it gets people motivated to call their members of Congress, to tell their friends, to educate themselves, read my book, read other books, to start this conversation, because I do think there is power if we come together.
Yeah, and just my 2 cents on the two topics. First, why in the world we have not seen the Senate Judiciary Committee hold hearings is just beyond me. It just feels like an abdication of their responsibility to dig in to what we have all seen, the abuses, the corruption, the conflict on the Supreme Court. There is rot at the top, and they're choosing not to hold any hearings about it. That is confounding to me. With respect to the special counsel, one way or another, these things have to be investigated, in my opinion. And if it takes special counsel, great, whatever it takes. With respect to the articles of impeachment, it reminded me of when I was supervising 30 federal homicide prosecutors at a pop when I was chief of homicide at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. I taught everybody in sort of, incoming training for new homicide prosecutors, it's more important to try cases than to win cases. If you have enough evidence to indict and to proceed to trial, if you can satisfy DOJ's standard of a reasonable likelihood of success on the merits, it is so much more important to try cases than to win cases. I feel the same way about articles of impeachment, even though I know that's exclusively a political endeavor, not a legal endeavor. It's more important to bring articles of impeachment if they are supported by the evidence than ultimately jumping to the end game and say, well, the Senate will probably never convict or they'll never be adopted or passed. And that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. More important to do what you are empowered to do and expected to do as public servants hired to represent we the people. It's more important that you do it than that you feel like it might be futile because it might not be successful at the end of the day. Okay, that's my rant. Let's just take on now, is there some hope? Is there a silver lining? Where are we and what should we be doing moving forward? And I have a feeling it's going to have a little something to do with voting.
Oh yeah, you talked about my books. The first one was How to Read the Constitution. Why? Get on the Constitution bike. It breaks it down so you can answer these questions yourself. I also have a Substack twice a week that breaks this down in a Q&A format for regular people. But it was writing that book that's caused me to realize, even I've been teaching constitutional law for 15, 17 years. It's the ballot box, friends. The whole kit and caboodle. Everything, the whole constitutional system, it all comes down to we the people. It all comes down to that ballot box. And people will say, well, I'm in a blue state, I'm in a red state, everything's gerrymandered, all the politicians are corrupt, I don't like anyone, my issues. If your vote didn't matter, no one would be trying so hard to take it from you. All of these obstacles to the ballot box would not be imposed if your vote didn't matter. So that's absolutely crucial. And the other piece is education and, and put the pressure on your members. I mean, if we didn't have 60% voting in elections in presidential years, Glenn, if we had 80, 90% people voting, they would have to pay attention.
Yeah. Here's how I've been characterizing the importance of the need to vote in the upcoming election. The Supreme Court has done Donald Trump's dirty bidding and has derailed, in my estimation, any prospect of another criminal trial before the election, right? He has 3 criminal cases still pending. He's actually pending sentencing in a 4th case. So there will be no more juries impaneled to pass judgment, to vote whether Donald Trump is guilty or not. However, we, the people, have been selected as the final jury before the election. We are now in a position to assess the evidence, just as jurors do when they are called to serve in a criminal case. We will assess all the available evidence. We get to vote as the jury on November 5th. And I'll be damned if we're not going to vote Donald Trump guilty, period. It gives me some comfort that we, the people, are the final jury standing between Donald Trump and dictatorship. And we're going to do our job on November 5th. I'm sure of it. So with all of that, Kimm, where can people find you? And I promise our viewers, we're going to put all of the links to all of Kimm's great work, including where you can pre-order her new book, The Pardon Power, coming out on September 2nd. But where should people be looking for you other than in the description of this video for all the links we're going to put in there?
Well, everything's at Kimm Wehle, KIMWEHLE. That's X, that's Instagram, and also on my website, KimmWehle.com. It's got links to my Substack, and as does Instagram. And the book is everywhere. So it's Amazon, all over the place. Not many of us out there, this German name, WEHLE. So if you just pop that into anything, you'll find me.
All right. Thank you, Kimm. I always learn something when I talk to you. I greatly appreciate you being with us today. And we're going to do this again, I think, as soon as your book is released and we reassess where the legal landscape is come September, October.
Yeah, it's a nail biter, Glenn. It was great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Justice matters.